We interrupt this program to give you a bulletin just received from one of our naval units at sea. A large object traveling at supersonic speed is headed over the North Atlantic.
Once a normal, voluptuously beautiful woman, she drove into a nightmare of horror and saw descending from the sky.
Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I think something is happening.
Ooh, I feel retrogasmic. 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 With Didi Deluxe
and Hetty LeBomb.
Welcome to the Retrogasmic Podcast. I'm Didi Deluxe.
And I'm Hetty LeBomb.
Today's show is dedicated to, the New Zealand community and how they've coped with the earthquake events that have happened to us over the last 5 to 10 years. We've got the guys from the Rockabilly Show and Shine and from the Kaikoura Hop. Both festivals have been instrumental in rebuilding their respective communities after being absolutely decimated by the two big shakes. And we've got a friend of the podcast, Monique Sweet, who came through a truly horrendous event in the big Christchurch earthquake. We've also got vintage trivia.
And a movie review from me, Wild Guitar, 1962.
Oh, that's a classic. And what else have we got?
Well, we're going to call Winky and see what she's doing.
Of course. Can't forget Winky. So let's get into the... it's a long show, so let's get into the trivia. Have a think about this. What were the Madison, the Swim, the Mashed Potato, the Frug, the Watusi, the Shake, and the Hitchhike?
Ooh, I wonder.
Answer later in the show. Miss Monique Sweet.
Hey, how's it going?
Hiya. Thank you very much for talking to the Retrogasmic Podcast. We do really appreciate it. This show is dedicated to people within the vintage community over here that lived through the handful of horrible earthquakes we've had in the last 5 or 10 years, and the way they've kind of dealt with it, what they've done to help rebuild their communities. We've spoke to the guys at the Kaikoura Hop and the Rockabilly Show and Shine, of course, down in Christchurch, and a couple of people suggested we speak to you. What I'd like to do is just let you tell your story.
Oh, okay. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me on. And I feel very fortunate that you feel that I have a story to share and that people might not only engage with, but maybe take something from.
For sure.
So I guess like my whole story, for those of you who haven't heard or this is your first time hearing about me, I was involved in the February earthquake that happened in 2011 in Christchurch, and I was working in the Pinegold Corporation building, which was one of the two major buildings that collapsed. So I was working on the first floor at the time for a trustee company called Perpetual Trustees, and I I had just left my desk at 12:50, and the earthquake happened at 12:51, which is it's fortunate for me in that particular instance. And I was trapped for about 5 hours. I wasn't just trapped in like a waiting in a giant hole kind of cave area. I was pinned underneath one of those old school chairs, you know, the ones, the metal frames.
Yep.
And I had a giant concrete beam on top of me. So I was trapped like that with the chair collapsing every time we had a strong aftershock. And I was trapped with 5 other people. We were called the Cafeteria 5 on the first floor. And we were 5 of probably the most fortunate people in our office from my work at that time, because basically, to break it down for you, there were about 40 people in my office. 10 people from my work didn't make it out that day. Another 10 were injured, and then the rest of us either came out with substantial injuries or we walked out of the building. And I was one of the people who I walked out that day and then had, say, thankfully, thank you to my lovely rescuer, Michael Hereford, if anyone wants to know. And...
I mean, I can't imagine being in a situation like that. I mean, I guess everybody in their life experiences close shaves, people jumping the lights or getting a bit out of your depth out at sea or something like that. But to be stuck for that length of time, I can't imagine. I mean, what's your mindset like? How do you process that?
So I'm not going to lie to you. Initially, there's this whole scenario of you don't know what's happened, and that was the first thing that actually happened. We didn't know that the building had collapsed. We thought that the roof had just come down on us. Like I don't know if that was somewhat denial or hopeful thinking, but when we started getting the major drafts coming through and we started hearing, we could hear the helicopters, and you could feel the rain when the rain started. So we kind of knew that something was up then. And we were on the first floor. So we were on the first floor of 5 floors. And we were the pancake, we were the base of the pancake.
Yeah.
And so from going through, you don't really know what's happened to not believing what's happened or not believing the situation you're in. So for instance, when the earthquake happened, I actually just thought it was this microwave making a loud noise. I was like, oh, that's an odd noise for that to be making. And it happened so quickly. And this is something that people don't understand. They think that when an earthquake happens, you've got heaps of time to run under a door frame or run yourself outside of the building. But in this particular circumstance, like this particular earthquake, it was maybe less than 3 seconds or 2 seconds, maybe not even that, in between it starting to shake, the building literally jumping up and down. I threw myself at a table just to try and get underneath it, and I didn't even make it underneath the table. I ended up having the door on top of me when I first came to. So when I say came to, I mean once the shaking stopped. So when I say I didn't really believe the situation I was in, when the shaking stopped for me, I was actually pinned down underneath, as I said, the table that was on top of the chair that I eventually got under. But I had my head literally pinned down to my knees with my legs out flat. So I didn't really know what had happened, and I was kind of like in this state of, whoa, what's happened? Okay, I just need to get out of this situation and I'll be able to move into another one. And I literally had to pull my leg so hard that I went through about 7 months to a year worth of physiotherapy just to get it back into a shape where I could use it for normal day-to-day activity. And that side, kind of you when you're put into a situation where you don't know what's happened, you go through phases of, okay, well, 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, survival mode.
Yep.
And when I was trapped underneath the seat, now that was a whole different instance. I literally thought I was going to die. When I say literally, I mean I phoned my grandmother to say goodbye because I knew, we managed to get through on a line out, and because I was in such a dire situation where I had so much pressure on me from this concrete beam that my choices were limited. I didn't think I had an out. I did, and when you start to come to terms with, okay, something bad has happened, and if our building is like this, what is the rest of the buildings going to be like?
Right. So you're you already mentioned your rescuer. How just describe how he got to you and how you managed to get out, because it sounds like you were in a pretty a pretty serious situation.
Yeah, it was. Again, so fortunate to have Michael. He was actually just an average Joe he was asleep when the earthquake happened, and he came from the outskirts of town, just drove off, left his mother screaming at him in tears as he was coming to just see if he could help. And he stopped at our building, and he decided, because you have to understand in this particular, in this type of circumstance, people don't know what to do. It's not a normal circumstance. And all the emergency services were so thinly spread across the city. Like, they didn't really have a huge amount of options. So he actually took it upon himself to go and take on a role where he was like, okay, I don't have any family. I'm going to go and I'm going to try and see if I can find any gaps and try and make my way through to see if I can hear anyone or if I can see anything, and go through just the gaps instead of, like, I don't know how else they got through us. The cutting of concrete, for instance, or yeah. So he went through that way. He literally went into a gap in the side, and then was just trying to find people when they could hear them. So they could go onto the ground floor, just to give you kind of like how it actually happened, and they could hear people. If they could hear people making noises, they would then try to find where in the building they are.
Brave man.
He is a super brave man. He actually had a firefighter who was there with him that day, who was like maybe 18 or 19. He didn't know how old he was, and he's never been able to find him. So maybe this is our chance to find Matt the firefighter who worked with Michael.
Let's hope someone. The bravery in that situation, I can't imagine that. It's incredible. So they eventually found you and somehow managed to pull you out.
Yeah. So Michael went through all these gaps to make a path for us. So what ended up happening was, so we've been trapped for quite a while, and we could hear rescuers helping other people in like a couple of portions of the building. But the first time when we heard someone kind of heard a noise underneath, and I was a bit, and I'm not ashamed to say this, I was a bit, not over dramatic. What's the term where you're, I was terrified.
Yeah, and understandably, I mean, there's no shame in that.
Yeah, so I heard a noise and I just started screaming at the top of my lungs, much to the dismay of the 4 other people who were around me. And someone ended up hearing us, so we all started yelling together, and they heard us from the ground floor underneath us. And the thing is, they kept asking us where we were, and we couldn't understand that they didn't know where we were, because we didn't realize the state of the building at that stage.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And so they were trying to come up to us, and then they ended up sending Michael in, and Michael just was like, okay, well, we know they're on this floor. And that's all the information he had to go in. They're on this floor, they're somewhere in the middle. And that's how he found us from there. So
he basically climbed through gaps and kept clearing away until he made almost like a tunnel for you guys to crawl back out of.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we actually had rescuers try and come to us from the top. So from the top of the floor, so they must have been on the 2nd or 3rd floor. And they kept saying, we're on your floor. Can you see our torchlight? And we were like, nope, we can't see your torchlight at all. And that's when you kind of started thinking, okay, maybe it's bad.
So an entire 5-story building basically collapsed down to effectively the basement and one other floor.
Yeah, so everything fell onto the 1st floor. So the ground floor was still there, but the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor were all pancaked on top of each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, I know since then you've gone on to do some great things. I mean, I know yourself and Fran both have done amazing things in the New Zealand vintage scene. You've got a very successful business. You've mentored lots of other people. How do you go from a situation like that could quite easily affect you long term, and you know, I mean, a lot of people I suspect would take years to get over something like that. How do you bounce back? What goes on inside your head?
Hey, look, I'm the first to admit that it's taken years to get to where I am today. I think that the difference in my mindset is I've looked at this, this event was such an unfortunate thing to happen, but it's so fortunate in that I've reflected on it and gone, okay, I'm not going to be defined by this circumstance, but what I am is going to let it, it showcases, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor.
Right. And
how am I going to live my life so that the people who passed away, and I know that this is a horrible way of saying it, I survived. So how am I going to live up to that almost,
privilege?
Privilege. Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a privilege. And I have always gone, this is my second chance. Like, I've had a lot of luck to get to where I am today. So how would I want to live that? And that's by being unapologetically myself. I don't want to have to hide behind, oh no, I can't do that because, XYZ's going to look at me funny. I kind of go, well, do I want to do this? Yes. Okay, then I'm going to try. It's like when you look at it from a perspective of, things that I have achieved in my life, like in the last couple of years. If it scares me or if it's something where, I could second guess myself as to whether or not I should do it.
Right.
It instantly makes me go, well, obviously I should do it. At the least I should try because I need to overcome this fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's inspiring and it's nice to hear you speaking like this because I can't imagine being in a situation like that, and it's great to hear that you've not only come out of it, but you've taken something good from it. That's fantastic. What's on the cards in the future for you? What have you got? Short term, medium term goals, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, honestly, at the moment, I'm just full on preparing for Christmas at my work.
Yeah.
If I'm completely honest. Outside of that, well, I would say that my goals are I've tried to take a step back from doing so much work and being involved in the community on that front, to try and actually be involved at the community at the forefront, like going to events and actually participating and being involved with the people. Because that's why I got involved in this particular scene. Well, not other than the fact that I love, everything about the style and the genre. But the reason I got involved in it is because it's such an amazing group of people who are involved in it.
Yeah.
And I want to get back into the heart of it and actually hang out with those people, get to know them more, and, at the very least, help motivate the next generation to come up and, try out new things at the very least, because that's what we're all about. Some people are so afraid to come into the scene because they don't want to be seen as different. But that's what we are. We're all different. We're all individuals. So why not just do it?
Absolutely. I mean, we spend half our time travelling around the country playing at these events, and obviously we see you guys there quite a bit. And the thing we've noticed in the last couple of years is the influx of much younger people, but it's the diversity of the people.
Yes.
Rather than just kind of people that kind of like the cars or kind of like the music and have therefore crossed over into the style as well. Mm-hmm. There's people from everywhere, every colour, shape, religion, creed, ideology, definition. I mean, literally every single facet of humanity. And they walk in the doors and everybody just goes, yeah, that's fine. What do you want to do? It's utterly amazing. I love it. I really do love it. And people like yourself and Fran and a few others are, I think, responsible for kind of, like the catalyst for that change. So, big round of applause from us in the studio. Look, thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking to us. Hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon. What's the next big event you guys are doing?
Oh, what's the next big event? Actually, do you know what I'm really excited about? Rebel Roundup 2019.
Oh, in February, is it?
Yeah, we're going to get a caravan. We're going to head on down to that and spend the whole weekend there. So I'm really excited about that one.
Fantastic.
It was really good last year. This year. Gosh, where's the time going, right? So yeah, that's the next upcoming big event that I'll be heading on to.
Wonderful stuff. Look, thank you so much for talking to us. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
Where's Winky?
Here's Winky.
Hi, Winky. How you doing?
I'm doing good today, and how are you?
Living the dream.
Living the dream.
So, where are you? What are you up to?
Right, okay, so today, actually, what I'm doing today is I'm actually stuck in the kitchen trying to bake a cake.
Okay, what kind of cake are we talking?
Today we're going for a sponge cake, but do you know what? I just, for the life of me, I can't bake. I can't cook. My limits only go up to like baked beans in the microwave. So I've had the mixer on. There's eggs all up the wall. There's flour everywhere. But I am looking deliciously amazing today in my Lindy Bop Las Vegas dress, because we all need a little sparkle sometime, and today's one of those days.
So now I've got this wonderful mental image of you in a Lindy Bop dress with one of those 1950s aprons on, and either your hair up in curlers or something.
Wow. I'm telling you, I actually have been trying to sort of go back into a more classic mode in regards to doing things day to day. Yes, I get on my hands and knees and scrub the floor because they done it back then, and it all worked perfectly fine. So today I'm cooking a cake, and I'm going from an old Edmonds cookbook, and but yeah, it just baking hates me. I don't know.
Hey, that's good. The last time I baked was probably a decade ago, and I tried to make some biscuits for someone, and I had to throw them out, and the birds wouldn't eat them either. They were they were like little frisbees. They were solid. Hey, look, changing the subject slightly. Today's show is all about the New Zealand earthquakes. We've been talking to people about the Christchurch one and the Kaikoura one, and you know, just I don't think people outside of New Zealand realise quite how badly it affected people. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you get the tail end of the Kaikoura one yourself?
Yes, that was a terrible night, I must admit. Yes, I was in Lower Hutt when the earthquake hit, and yes, it was very, very traumatic, I have to admit. Although there was a slight bit of romance in the whole scenario. I got swept across the bed by my lovely partner Scott and held me very tightly under the doorframe until he saw the TVs wobbling about and instantly dropped me and ran after all the televisions. So, you know.
Priorities, nice.
Priorities, I know. Don't worry about the Winky. Just go for the TVs.
Now, go on. I remember you telling me a story about your mum as well that night.
Oh, yes. My poor dear mother. Well, she takes her teeth out every night and puts them on the side of the cabinet, and she's got an orthopedic bed on wheels, and so the bed had gone flying across the room, literally. And she kind of barricaded herself in, and she was trying to scream for me, but she couldn't find her teeth, and it was utter chaos. It was utter chaos.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing. It's not funny, I'm sorry.
But
if Winky's mum's listening, I know it must have been a horrible night. But I'm sorry, that's pretty funny.
It was terrible. My poor mum. And even to this day, when she's positioning, we live in Te Awamutu now, so when we're positioning her bed around the room, we have to make sure that, you know, if it's going to roll anywhere, it's just going to roll back and forward off walls as opposed to up in corners of rooms and, you know, behind doors. But on a serious note, though, you know, people in New Zealand, and I know there has been a lot of people in the, you know, in the pin-up community who have gone through such terrible times, especially down in Christchurch with the earthquakes. And, you know, post-traumatic stress is a real thing. And even now when trucks go past, our house shakes quite drastically. And,
your first thought is that it's an earthquake.
Oh, all the time.
Wow.
And, you know, it's a very real thing. And I think when you have been through such large events which are completely out of your control, like earthquakes and so forth, you know, I think it's really important to address, you know, people's stress levels and their anxiety levels, because trust me, it's very real. It's very, very real.
Well, look, I appreciate your honesty, and it's a testament to the kind of the Kiwi mindset that everyone we've talked to so far has very honestly told us about what a horrible event they were all involved in, and then they're basically laughing about it and how they're rebuilding, and lots of people seem to have almost taken it as a life lesson, which I find fascinating. You know,
absolutely.
My first reaction would be to move somewhere where there aren't earthquakes.
Well, that's what we done.
Clever girl, yeah. Well, look, thank you, Winky.
No problem.
We will talk to you soon. Go and maybe pop down to Pack and Save and get yourself a cake and just tell Scott that you made it.
Yeah, well, Scott comes home for lunch every day at 1 o'clock, and I always like to have a nice lunch for him, but he's going to come home to an absolute flour bomb in the kitchen, I'm afraid, so I might have to go and clean myself up for him and go to the supermarket and buy a cake.
Oh, good. Thanks. Bye-bye, Winky. See ya.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
So we're lucky enough to be speaking with Doug O'Callaghan, the Kaikoura Hop. It's a legendary event in New Zealand. Just tell us a bit about how the event started, and then when that terrible earthquake hit the town and the area, and how you guys kind of got around it.
First of all, thank you very much, and yes, good to be talking with you. Yeah, Kaikoura Hop started 8 years ago, sitting in my business at the time going, well, what can we do in the low season to help the business community shorten the low season? So, yeah, it started out with let's get some cars. I'm a bit of a car enthusiast. I wouldn't mind looking at cars. I just didn't want to go anywhere and do that. So I was trying to attract cars here. So the first year we started out, it was a bit crazy. And we were thinking, let's see what we can do. And we've got 20 or 30 cars here. We had 77 registered the first year, and 177 showed up.
Wow.
And it was just awesome. And each year from there it doubled. So the next year we had 350, and then so we got to our best year at about 1,100 cars at the rugby grounds, which then prompted us to move to the racecourse, a 13.5 acre venue, which was much bigger and easier to manage and better layout than where we were at the old rugby grounds. That was the first year we moved there. Very successful. Everyone was a bit sceptical about how far away we were going to be and what was happening. And so we worked on that, and then the second year, of course, the earthquake struck straight after the first event.
And even by New Zealand standards, that was a biggie, wasn't it?
It was a huge one, yeah. I mean, I've never been so terrified in all my life of the violence and the prolongedness of it. It was a 2-minute earthquake, so it was constant for 2 minutes. You couldn't even stand up in my house, and we all eventually got outside, and it was just the most horrific, the noise, the ripping and the tearing sounds of the house at the time, and just the sheer violence of it was just incredible, something you'll never ever forget.
So for people listening outside of New Zealand that maybe haven't experienced earthquakes or have only basically seen them on the news, just kind of go over what the change to the town was, because obviously we were here that last year and we've seen things largely repaired, but at the time it was catastrophic, wasn't it?
It was. We were cut off, so no access in or out of the town anyway, and we had three ways to get into the north, to the south, and then an inland route, and the whole three of them were just completely cut off you. There was no way of getting in unless you flew in.
Was that the earthquake tearing the roads up, or was that rocks falling down from the mountains, or?
A bit of everything. Rocks falling down. There was massive slides, and bridges were ripped out because it was an uplifting, kind of a violent uplifting sort of an earthquake. Some of the areas along the coast had uplifted as high as 6 metres out of the ground. So where there was water was up nearly at the road is now 250 metres from the roadways, and there's beaches where there was never beaches before, and it's just amazing when you see it along the coastlines there. And of course the coast is got hills right to the beach, and the roads are basically cut along the edge of the foot of the hill, and so they came down, and they're still coming down, and they're working on that, and it'll be another 2 years away, I guess, before we see finished roads that we would expect that we could drive over nice in our hot rod classics muscles, etc. It's just amazing.
So
stuff.
At one point the only way food and petrol and things like that were getting into the town was via boat, wasn't it?
Well, it came in. The army were the first ones in with 8-wheel drive Unimogs coming in from the inland road. The first driver came in with Unimog. We spoke to him, and he said it was the most terrifying drive he had had in this massive big truck, bringing in a truckload of food in. Was amazing. I mean, part of the earthquake, that the main water line into town had absolutely ruptured, just smashed apart. So there was
you didn't even have drinking water?
Not for a start. And so there was temporary repairs done here and there, and pipes running on along the side of the road to get water down to full reservoirs, and it was just amazing. So yeah, we didn't have a cell phone reception or nothing.
So what time of year was that?
That was in November. I think today we were talking the 10th, in 4 days' time at midnight.
It would have been
14th. Yep.
Yeah. So this happened in November, and the following September you ran another Kaikoura Hop. Is that right?
Correct. Never missed a beat. We ran straight in. We decided the community was at a low. There was lots of nothingness happening, and people trying to get things done and trying to move on. And we decided, well, there is some form of access to Kaikoura, so we decided that we would run the Kaikoura hop regardless of what it cost. We were putting it on just to give the warm, fuzzy feeling, the feel like they were human again, and doing so. And so it was pretty cool. We had about 350 registered cars that year, and probably about 500 odd cars showed up. For us, it was a quiet year, but for the community, it was a great year. It was fantastic. Just the people came. We had a lot of day trippers. Accommodation is affected greatly, so it's not just the accommodation that was broken and damaged, but it was also the workers that had come in were staying in accommodation. So there was also people with broken houses. So the broken house people were out of the houses and living in accommodation, rental accommodation, and motels or whatever. And also then there was people here to repair the houses that were living in the accommodation as well. So it was a kind of a vicious circle, and it still is today a little bit. We still do have a lot of that use. There's still 3 motels that aren't in operation at the moment, and we don't know what their future is or what's going to happen with them. There's potential of a new hotel complex being built by 2020 and ready to operate and go, and so that's going to ease a little bit of that pressure. The roadworks are getting better and they're getting further ahead with things, and as they progress forward, we're going to see more accommodation freed up, and then once the house repairs are done, then you're going to see more accommodation freed up, and then that'll let us come back. So we have a target date of 2020, so September 2020 for the hop.
Back to new normal.
We'll be back to some form of new normal, whatever new normal will be. So different mindsets from the people in town on how they look and think about things, and how precious things are or delicate things are really when you start to think about the big scheme of things, I guess, really.
I have to say, I mean, we were there this year. It was a fantastic event. We just said exactly the same thing to the guys at the Rockabilly Show and Shine. Kiwis do have a way of bringing together something that on the surface seems almost impossible and possibly chaotic and a disaster in the making, and just making it run seamlessly. I mean, the Kaikoura hop I thought was wonderfully run, and it was a big event. I mean, it was a big space, and it was pretty much all volunteers. Am I right?
No, in fact, no volunteers. In fact, Fonda and I organise and run the event, and we pay everybody to be there.
I didn't know that.
We gave up on volunteers, and unfortunately it's an unfortunate thing in small towns, and particularly on the earthquake year, more so everybody was working big long 12-hour days and longer, and so looking for volunteers was very, very hard. And then people are generous with their time, of course, but we decided for going forward, pay. We hire staff, so every person at that event.
So even putting the event on, you're putting money directly back into the local community.
Yeah, we put it, and the event generates probably somewhere in excess of $2.5 million of spend back into the community every year. The event itself is designed for that. It's designed to break even, pretty close to, and then we push all the money back into the community through the spend into the community. And so some people look at it and they go, well, how does that work? And well, okay, so we're busy this weekend at the motels, so we need more cleaning staff on, so the cleaning staff get a few extra hours. Those people come in to pay the week after the hop, and they go, oh, I've got a few extra money, so the kid needs some new shoes, or let's go and get some fish and chips, or go and do something. So that money then gets spent back into the community. So it's sort of a win-win for everybody when you look at things as how things work. And in the scheme of things, you go, oh, how much money is it worth? It's worth millions.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's great that it's come from the community. It's great that it's not just basically people putting their hand out to the government and saying we've had a terrible time, help us out, which is fair as well. But I mean, it's. You guys must have had some decent sponsors. Do you want to give? No?
Repco and Penrite and MPD came on this year. Yep. Sponsors. Repco and Penrite have been on board for a couple of years now, and MPD came on this year again, and we're just working with new sponsors or similar, the same sponsors for next year to cut everything.
For me, that makes it even more extraordinary because. Yeah. You can see all these things happening, and the people marshalling the traffic and the rental of that huge space. I mean, that can't be cheap. I don't want to know the exact figure, but and even down to kind of pushing the bands on and flying idiots like us in. I mean, that's got to be paid for somewhere. And
we spent about $68,000 on putting on the Kaikoura hop last year.
Wow!
And spent about and we earned. not quite 70, and then we got another bill in after that, so it sort of squared that off nicely.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's about where we're looking at, and that's the cost of the event. The event will cost more this coming year. We're having to make some changes. We caused Kaikoura's first roadblock, but unfortunately that means that we need to now put in a better traffic management, which requires stop-go people on the intersection for a few hours, and at some point they'll either need to be paid for through sponsorship, through somebody sponsoring that, or
there was, we were standing up on the hill looking down, and we reckon there was about 1,200 cars. You reckon there was more than that?
Yeah, there was at least 1,200 cars on site. There was probably more cars outside and around, and we had.
But this isn't people just turning up in their cars. These were classic cars and hot rods.
That's correct. There was probably 500 cars outside of the venue that didn't come in on top of that. So there could have easily been 1,500 to 1,700 cars there, classic and hot rods.
That's remarkable. As well as all those retailers, the people selling vintage clothes. There was the tattoo people there, pinstriping people there. There was everything. I mean, it was like a mini city.
Yep, and Repco and Penrite and that, they all had stores in there selling stuff on.
So without a real major sponsor, you're still breaking even. I mean, that's hats off to you. Brilliant, mate. That's great.
It's all a numbers game. We're just going through the budget for next year, this year, right now. We've just done last year's books. We have an accountant to run that to make sure that what we're doing is correct.
Yep.
And then so this year we're just running down our budget. So we're having to make some changes to where we spend money, so we can take Rob Peter to pay Paul for next year. So we're expecting to see a budget for this year probably close to 75G. So how we get that in is a critical point now, is what we're doing. So we're looking at selling more advertising. A couple of the sponsors we're working with at the moment, past sponsors and new sponsors, as to coming in with sponsor packages, and we're working with some other people to see where we can actually get some sponsor money in, or how we can earn some money to do so. One of the things we started this year was we will be having a hop shop, so we're buying in product wholesale and we'll be retailing it to offset some of our income.
Great.
Yeah. We also run the bar at the hop, so we buy alcohol and run it through our bar to help offset the cost too. So that's all.
You've got to.
Yeah, it's all about number games. So now we're in the number crunching. We sit down, we work out what we need to spend, then we work out how we're going to get the money back to cover the cost of that. And one offsets the other. Hopefully, at the end of the day, we all come out smiling and go, woohoo!
Well, the best of luck next year. Now, anyone in New Zealand will already know this, but for the overseas listeners, you and the lovely Fonda are going to get married at next year's Hop, aren't you?
Correct. We're having a Greece theme wedding next year at the Hop, so planning's well underway on that. And apparently I'm not allowed to drive in a police car in handcuffs.
This gentleman got up on the stage in front of like thousands of people and proposed to her, and I've never seen a woman look so
shocked. She almost looked in horror, didn't you? I thought she was going to bolt there for a minute, but it was hilarious. Yeah, poor woman.
Oh, well, congratulations, mate. I'm sure it's going to be an absolutely fantastic event.
Yeah, and look, everybody's invited. It's cost you $10 at the gate to get in. Dress up as a T-bird or a pink lady. Come and join us. It's going to be an hilarious.
So you're inviting the world to your wedding.
We're probably going to have one of the biggest weddings in Kaikoura ever, just for a laugh. A couple of hours from 1 to 2, then we've got to get back to work, and we'll be straight back into Miss Hop straight after that, and a few other jobs to do. So yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and look forward to hearing this.
Bye bye, mate.
It's 1962, and the world has reached peak rock and roll. You're at the drive-in waiting to see Elvis in Girls, Girls, Girls. But first, you had to sit through this.
An all-American boy sings his way into your hearts. Like thousands of kids who come to Hollywood every year, see Arch Hall Jr. in the swingingest musical action picture of the year.
Arch Hall Jr. plays Bud Eagle, a naive country kid who comes to Hollywood and makes it big, but learns show business isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Golly, no kidding?
This is a comedy that's far funnier when it isn't actually trying to be.
What say we have a diversion? Yeah, good idea. Hey, Weasel, what's a diversion? You know, like in the army, stupid.
First infantry diversion, second infantry diversion. Oh, no.
This is Ray Dennis Steckler's directorial debut, who later made films like The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies, and my personal favourite low-budget superhero film, Rat-Fink-a-Boo-Boo. Hailed as a cult genius by some, Steckler is definitely one of a kind. Though this film is largely cliché, we do see some glimpses of Steckler's signature style of crazy camera work and largely nonsensical script.
Kid, this is Daisy. She's gonna teach you how to swing.
Hi. So, this is Buddy Boy.
The musical numbers and performances are pretty average, but there are some good dance scenes, including an iconic beach scene at the end. 3 out of 5 from me.
We're at Rockabilly Show and Shine in New Brighton, near Christchurch in New Zealand. It's been an absolutely beautiful day. There are thousands of people here. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of beautiful classic cars and hot rods. You can hear the live music playing in the background. I think it's Candy and the Rockets at the moment. There's been some amazing food, lots of vintage clothing. It's been wonderful. I'm here with organiser Robbie Bagent. Hi Robbie.
How you going, Duncan?
So, just give us a bit of background on how this whole event came about.
So Rockabilly Show and Shine started 5 years ago. This is our 5th event. 11 years ago, 10 years ago, we had a massive earthquake, or so, say 2010, 2011. Yeah. We had some massive earthquakes here. It really decimated this area. And part of trying to pick the area back up was to try and drive people back into New Brighton. So we got together with a group and we said, hey, let's do a car show and have a ball and just create some atmosphere here. And we did that, and it was a huge success. And then afterwards the car guys came back to us and said, would you do it again? I thought, you know, why the hell not? It was great fun. So we did it again, and
it was a bigger success.
It was a bigger success. Car numbers went from 200 to 250. Big stall, and we thought, you know, we'll just keep running this. We'll make it an annual event and just really drive New Brighton back onto the map and make the place hum for at least one day a year. And it's just now 2 days, and we do cruise runs as a group every month, and then we have this big car event once a year. And it's, you know, this year we've had close on 500 cars into the event, probably around 12 to 15,000 people through the gates.
Wow.
It's done as a community fundraiser. All the funds we raise go back into local community groups. So we don't fund big charities. We fund each year the New Brighton Christmas Parade, fairly family orientated, and you know, a smaller community group that doesn't get a lot of funding. We've helped out the Catholic Church, community gardens, Guardians of Rafiti, so very locally focused. And I think, you know, after this year we'll have poked probably $25,000-$30,000 back into this community. That's and fantastic. It's a really good feeling.
Yeah, I don't think people outside of New Zealand realise how badly some of the communities were affected. I mean, we've been down here 2 or 3 times now, and you can see the high street has still got a large number of shops that are just closed up because they're either awaiting insurance or they're trying to rebuild or trying to get themselves legally safe. The pier was basically snapped in two, wasn't it?
Well, the pier moved. The pier's been repaired now. There was a lot of fracturing around the bases of the columns and things. But, you know, to give an idea, we lost around 8,000 homes in this area in those earthquakes. Wow. So, you know, that's a big chunk of your population that disappears. Took a long time for things to get put right, roads, and as you say, the central business district here in New Brighton is still very run down, and you know, that's the buildings are earthquake damaged. Some of it's to do with the owner's lack of interest, but this community is extremely strong and very, very close knit. So when you do something like this, they all get together and they get around it and they actually make something of it and support it, and make sure that whatever we're doing is a real big success.
Yeah, I mean, something we noticed last year when we were down is number one, the amount of just basically people selfishly throwing their own time and effort in. No one's kind of putting their hand up saying, look at me, look what I'm doing. Just lots of hard work and basically pulling together to try and create something that's really puts the town back on the map, but also is going to be amazing fun for people. And it's a great event, mate. I mean, credit to you.
And thank you. And like you say, we're a team. We're a small team. There's only 11 of us, and everybody works really hard. We take nothing out of this day. We don't get paid. All of us do it because we love cars. We love the music, the clothes, the environment, and actually just doing something for our community and making a really special day out of it.
Now, obviously, getting things like this off the ground does cost money. I think it's only fair. Mention a couple of the people that have backed you, some of the sponsors.
Yeah, it sure does. So we've had some really good sponsors over the years. This year we had a few of our existing sponsors come back, so Hammond's Collision Repairs, Bell Lamb and Trotter, who funnily enough, a local funeral director and company, but they've got an amazing Packard hearse and Harley hearse that they bring along for the day. A lot of smaller sponsors, but the thing with this community, our naming sponsor this year is Level 1 Coffee Bar, or Craft Beer and Coffee Bar. Now that business had been open for 2 days when I rocked up there, and I said to the owner, "Hey Beck, I've got an option here for you." Threw an opportunity at her, and she was like, "Hell yeah, we're into that."
That's
so
fantastic.
a 2-day-old business coming on as our naming sponsor, and they've just been absolutely fantastic.
Wonderful, excellent. So just give them another plug.
So that's the Level 1 Craft Beer and Coffee Bar. If you're ever in New Brighton, they're upstairs above South of India, right on the shorefront in the main area of New Brighton there. Craft beers, wines, few select spirits, awesome coffee, fantastic venue. You look out over the water or back down the mall.
View as well.
Absolutely amazing, yeah.
Brilliant stuff. So, I mean, this is the 5th one?
This is our 5th event this year, so...
What's the plans for next year? Because I know you're already thinking about it.
Yeah, we're already thinking about it, and we let this thing grow pretty organically. This year we've just about filled the area that we've got to the max. We'll see how we go. We've got this space for the next 2 years now. We'll do the event again the next year and the year after, and if it's still growing, we'll look at expanding it, and we'll just let it keep growing. And we're hoping the New Brighton Rockabilly Show and Shine can eventually become the equivalent of the Whangamata Beach Shop up in the North Island.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely the lifestyle groups, if you like, and the interest for it on the South Island. And as big as Beach Shop is, and it's an astonishing event. I mean, we talked to Noddy the other day, and it's just it's a mind-blowing kind of just the organisation and size of it. But not everybody can get from the South Island up to the North Island. So there's definitely there's a space there waiting to be filled.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's a lot of car events in the South Island, and they're all different, and they've all got their own thing. I think what we do here is more about family orientation, creating a really fun day for everybody, a day where people come along, and we're at the end of the day now. Still got a third of the cars here. There's still probably a couple of thousand people milling around the event. So we've created an event that you can come to in the morning, you can stay here all day, you can have a lot of fun, and it does something for our community at the end of it.
Something I think worth mentioning is that you've just got volunteers on the gate, and it's a gold coin donation.
Gold coin donation. So, we will change that over time. But the whole idea is not to make a lot of money in the event itself. The idea is to bring people into the district and get them coming back down the track and supporting the local businesses and bars and cafes and everything that makes New Brighton what it is.
Fantastic. Look, thank you so much for talking to us, Robbie, and we'll see you at the Rockabilly Hop tonight.
You sure will, Duncan. It's going to be fantastic.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bud.
And now it's the time that we reveal the answer to the vintage trivia. I know you're all massively excited.
Oh, yes, I'm.
You look excited.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Yeah.
She's standing up. She's not on the edge of a seat at all. So, okay, the question was, what were the Madison, the Swim, the Mashed Potato, the Frug, the Watusi, the Shake, and the Hitchhike? You know this.
I'm doing them right now.
She is.
It is all the coolest dance crazes from the 1960s.
Indeed it was. Now, there was hundreds. There was a period of about 3 or 4 years where every single song invented a dance and had it in the lyrics. And it was kind of one of those things in the nightclubs that, you'd learn this week's dance and, it's...
I say we bring that back.
Absolutely. I'm not sure I want to do the jerk, the chicken, the pony, or the dog particularly, though, which were other dances.
Well, my personal favourite is the Watusi, which you may remember from the 1960s Batman and Robin TV show.
Yes.
Yes, that was one of the more surreal moments of an already very surreal show.
How did that happen? Him and Robin would kind of stand in there with their capes.
It was a sort of an attack, wasn't it? They were trying to confuse the villains. I think they succeeded.
Retrogasmic.
That's the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. As always, if you listen on iTunes, please leave us a review. It really helps us out. If you're listening via one of the many other streaming services, do subscribe to us. That helps us as well. We do appreciate it. See you next time.
See ya. Bye.
Retrogasmic. Retrogasmic. With Didi Deluxe
and Hattie Le Bomb.